Billionaire asks Black Waitress for financial tips as a joke, but her incredible response reveals the stark divide between rich and poor. Jamila was hunched over the counter, the smell of greasy burgers and coffee wafting around her like an everyday fog. She sprinted between tables at the diner on the bustling outskirts of Chicago, her muscles aching and her head spinning with the unrelenting demands of single motherhood. Her heart weighed heavy with the thought of her son, Malik, and the dreams she had for him. Void of any safety net and stuck in the ceaseless cycle of economic grind, she brightened the lives of regulars who trickled in, offering them warmth amidst her own chilly reality. Then, one snowy Thursday, fate dropped a curveball in the form of Mark Graves, a billionaire whose visage was synonymous with success, plastered across magazines and pumping life into the upper crust of society. As he settled into his booth, Jamila felt a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. His laughter filled the air like a jarring note, a stark contrast to the subdued murmurs that usually accompanied the diner's modest patrons. "Hey, Jamila," he quipped, a wink in his voice. "Got any financial tips for someone like me?" Laughter erupted from his table, warm and careless, igniting a spark of resentment in Jamila's chest. What was a joke to him felt like daggers to someone who toiled for every cent. She hesitated, her mind racing. Here stood a man beneath a cloud of privilege, a man who had never struggled for a single bill. Did he even comprehend the sacrifices she made? "Actually," she replied, cool but trembling with indignation, "real financial advice comes from understanding struggle, not bank accounts." Silence blanketed the booth like a dense fog, the laughter that surrounded them caught in a temporal loop. Her heart thundered in her chest. Was it wise to confront him? Voices of doubt coursed through her mind, but beneath the surface flared a longing, a yearning for recognition that was far too often missed, like an overlooked corner of the horizon. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The ripple effect of that moment was immeasurable. Jamila suddenly found herself spiraling into a turbulent storm. Her thoughts became a cacophony of what-ifs. What if Mark's audience dismissed her? What if they turned her into a meme? Her heart raced, she could feel the weight of the spotlight locking on her, scrutinizing every aspect of her unkempt existence. Critiques flooded in, mingling with validation, creating a storm of confusion that clouded her already fragile psyche. Her self-worth reeled like a ship caught in choppy seas, battered by voices that questioned whether her struggle, her life, really mattered. Each time she caught her breath, another wave of anxiety crashed in, pulling her deeper into uncertainty. The dissonance within her amplified, sculpting into a tangible force as she clutched her phone, watching her life morph from a quiet existence into public spectacle. Facing Mark was just the beginning. An old friend re-emerged unexpectedly in her mind, bringing with him ghosts of choices and unfulfilled aspirations. What did it really mean, the balance she struck between survival and worth? As Jamila stood at this precipice, a shudder raced down her spine. Would they see her strength, or would they focus on her lowly status? Could she really transform the chaos around her into something meaningful, amidst the haunting past calling her name? Jamila felt a disquieting energy coursing through her as she exited the diner that night. The air was frigid against her skin, but it was the chill of uncertainty that made her shiver. She replayed the incident with Mark over and over, each iteration sending sharp jolts through her mind. The laughter, the light-hearted banter, it seemed to echo around her, drowning out the critical internal voice that nearly drowned her in self-doubt. Was she a fool for standing her ground, or had she merely revealed a hidden strength? As she unlocked the door to her small apartment, Malik's laughter echoed down the hallway, reaching her even before she stepped inside. The sight of him, sprawled on the floor with his toys, tugged at her heart and conjured a wave of maternal resolve. She had dedicated herself to him, fought for a future that was brighter than her own, yet, here she was, engulfed by insecurities that threatened to swallow her whole. After tucking him into bed, she settled onto the worn couch, her thoughts spiraling once again. This time, though, instead of yielding to despair, she grabbed a notebook and a pen. The pen felt foreign in her hands, but it was necessary. She began writing, pouring out her frustrations, her ambitions, and most importantly her dreams for Malik. Each word transformed into a lifeline, grounding her as she navigated her swirling emotions. What if she began to channel her experience? She started jotting ideas for a blog, a platform where she could voice her story, express her unique perspective on money, struggles, and perseverance, the things rich folks often overlooked. With every stroke of the pen, her passion began to outweigh her self-doubt. In the days that followed, Jamila felt the weight of a decision bearing down on her. Would she share her voice with the world, risk the scrutiny, the laughter, but also the possibilities? The diner buzzed with its usual cacophony around her, but she noticed less of the greasy plates and scuffed floors. Instead, her senses began soaking in the subtleties of every patron that walked in. One particular conversation between a couple struck her. They discussed business ventures, plans for investments, and wealth accumulation, topics that revolved around numbers, devoid of the emotional weight of financial struggle. Her hands trembled around the coffee pot when she realized that her perspective was starkly different from theirs. Flashes of inspiration surged, compelling her to confront this arena of wealth with her own coalesced understanding of its direct impact on lives like hers. Jamila knew she had something to say. She envisioned the ways she could empower herself and others who shared similar struggles. She was tired of being silenced. Tired of feeling invisible. And now, as her confidence was tempered in the crucible of discomfort, the need to act surged forth. Determined, she began taking notes every time she interacted with someone of means. If she was going to write about the divide, she would need to dissect the conversations around her more holistically. With each engagement, she understood that financial literacy wasn't just about the numbers, it fed into the intricacies of human resilience and spirit. Stepping out of her comfort zone ignited both fear and exhilaration. Conversations became laboratory experiments, her responses carefully crafted, building her understanding of different socio-economic viewpoints. This wasn't just about her, it was about creating a bridge where she could share insights gleaned from the lives of those below the wealth threshold. Yet, as she positioned herself at the edge of opportunity, Jamila sensed a new looming presence, an unanswered question: could she really change how others perceived the financial struggles of people like her? It was nearly impossible to predict how far her voice could travel, but she was willing to navigate uncharted waters. The time had come to face her fears and leap into the unknown. Would she emerge stronger, or would the weight of expectations drag her down? As she ventured onto this new path, uncertainty hung in the air like an unsolved puzzle, just waiting for one final piece to fit what it would take to seize the moment and awaken an unyielding resolve in her quest for recognition and identity. Jamila stood at the threshold of her new path, contemplating the blank screen of her laptop. The cursor blinked at her, tauntingly patient, as the words she envisioned eluded her. It had been days since she decided to launch her blog, a platform that promised to amplify her voice, yet the enormity of it all weighed heavily on her shoulders. Her heart raced with each moment of hesitation, as doubt nagged at the corners of her mind. Who was she to speak on finance? Who would even read her thoughts? She inhaled deeply, drawing in the rich aroma of the coffee brewing nearby. This moment was hers, she needed to seize it. She reminded herself of Malik's laughter, the dreams she conjured for him each night. It was more than just a blog, she needed it to reflect her truth and support the future she wanted for him. The day unfolded with promises of inspiration and dread. She took notes during her shifts, playing the role of an attentive waitress while weaving through the stories shared by her patrons. Occasionally, she found herself daring to engage in conversations about money, probing their views with questions that sometimes caught them off guard. Their dismissive chuckles stung, but beneath them, Jamila felt a spark. Her voice was forming. As the dinner rush wound down, a tall figure caught her eye, an affluent businessman who often frequented the diner. His presence bubbled with confidence and entitlement. Tonight, however, her resolve simmered just below the surface. When he casually asked for financial tips, believing it to be a light-hearted joke, Jamila felt her stomach churn. Instead of the laughter she expected, she leaned in, fixing him with a steady gaze. "Wealth is a complex conversation," she replied, her voice unwavering. "It's not just about investments, it's about the stories that get buried under numbers. You may not know how work experience shapes someone else's understanding of finance." She watched his smirk falter as the words settled. The table grew silent, the ambience thickening with each sudden realization. Jamila continued, the hurt of her past blending with newfound confidence guiding her thoughts. "Every dollar means something different to a single mother than it does to you. It's not just about how to grow wealth, it's about how to survive with what little you often overlook." The reaction of the businessman was mixed, somewhat astonished, perhaps even willing to engage more deeply. Yet inside, she wrestled with the repercussions of her boldness. Had she crossed an invisible line, or opened a door? It was a new experience, challenging yet empowering. Her heart pounded in her chest, bringing clarity to her resolve. This was the voice she wanted to develop for her blog. Constructing her narrative was becoming less about seeking affirmation and more about capturing truths. The fear of exposure transformed into a driving force, the possibility of confronting ignorance electrified her. With every interaction, she was not just formulating concepts, she was building resilience and sharpening her voice for broader discussions. Yet, the question lingered, was she prepared to venture deeper into the divide between her life and those of the affluent she served? Back home, Jamila sat at her desk, thoughts racing. Would she write about this experience, exposing the vulnerability that lived in those moments? Or would this be another instance of fear holding her back? She could feel it within her, a story wanting to unfold, a perspective yearning to be articulated. But as she poised her fingers above the keyboard, the clatter of a text message pulled her attention to a sudden urgency. A reminder from her old college professor flashed before her eyes, an invitation to speak at a community forum on financial literacy. Jamila's pulse quickened, anticipation blooming within her. Was this the opportunity she had been waiting for? The chance to share her journey, to challenge perceptions and inspire others like her? But alongside the excitement came trepidation. Could she rise to the occasion? Her heart wrestled with doubt and determination. One thing was certain, embracing this challenge could redefine her narrative. With fresh resolve, she turned back to the screen. What she would write next could change everything. But as uncertainty lingered in her thoughts, the climb towards her new identity loomed large. Was she truly ready for the stage where her voice could be magnified? What awaited her there could either solidify her newfound purpose or push her back into the shadows. Jamila felt the weight of the invitation burning in her pocket as she paced her small living room. This forum wasn't just a casual gathering, it was a stage adorned with people she deemed far more qualified than herself. As she mentally prepared, her thoughts spiraled into a labyrinth of self-doubt. The affluent audience would expect polished theories and complex jargon, not the raw honesty she displayed during her shifts. Could her lived experience truly resonate in a sea of well-rehearsed presentations? As the evening turned to night, she took another deep breath, casting aside her fears for the moment. She couldn't afford to let this opportunity slip away. She retreated to her laptop, eager to draft not only her speech but also the foundation of her blog. The cursor flickered as anticipation surged within her. She pondered how to frame her narrative, how to share that wealth was not merely numbers but entangled histories and aspirations. The room filled with the aroma of her brewing coffee, mingling with her thoughts. Writing forced her to confront uncomfortable realities, yet it also illuminated a path forward. With each keystroke, she recalled conversations witnessed from her corner of the diner, stories subtly weaving through every tip jar and gasp of surprise, and the triumphs over financial struggles that she had learned from her patrons. They became her informal professors, each oozing wisdom filtered through perseverance. With renewed clarity, she knew she had to speak for them, articulating the lessons learned in that worn diner. She envisioned her voice powerful enough to transcend the superficial realm of finance, challenging the status quo, and drawing attention to neglected narratives. As she envisioned her blog, it transformed into a repository of experiences that could connect others who shared similar battles. In her reflections, she saw flashes of her childhood, her mother tirelessly balancing 2 jobs, always counting dollars at the end of each month. That dedication demanded acknowledgement, those narratives needed amplification. This revelation ignited something fierce within her. Jamila realized each tale insignificant to the powerful could inspire someone else on the fringes. The clock ticked insistently, its relentless presence urging her onward. She began outlining her speech for the forum, crafting key points that would develop into her own voice. Each component felt less daunting with every articulation. She was challenging herself to not just tell her truth but to package it compellingly, brimming with experiences that would make people listen. Days passed, and with each sentence, her apprehension morphed into determination. Jamila rehearsed in front of her bathroom mirror, speaking to her own reflection, until she no longer recognized the trepidation plastered on her face. Instead, she saw resolve in her eyes as she practiced her key messages. But beneath the enthusiasm lay a simmering anxiety. What if they dismissed her words as naive? What if she faltered when faced with polished critics? Every positive affirmation she crafted was shadowed by echoes of doubt. Could she truly wield her voice, transform her experience into something universally impactful? The day of the forum arrived, and she stood backstage, heart hammering against her ribcage, each throb reminiscent of the moments she spent crafting her message. The crowd marveled at credentials and experiences far removed from her own struggles. But she had to remind herself of the power behind her vulnerability. Her truth didn't need to wear a suit. As she stepped into the spotlight, an undeniable anchor formed within her. This was not about convincing others she belonged, it was about daring to unveil hidden truths that bubbled beneath the surface. Yet, in that first breath, as the audience turned toward her, she felt an unexpected wave of uncertainty. Could this actually help others? Or would she vanish beneath the weight of their expectations? The moment pressed forth, shaping her reality. What awaited her when she opened her mouth was anything but certain. Would she connect with them, or would her voice falter like a whisper lost in the din? Her pulse raced, anticipation building. This moment could either cast her into the light or seal her back in obscurity. What awaited her on this stage could reshape her life forever. Jamila's heart pounded fiercely as she scanned the audience, faces blurring into a sea of expectations. A thought flashed through her mind: what if, in this moment, she could reshape the narrative of who she was? This was more than just a speech, it was a reclamation of her identity, a chance to voice the truths that permeated her experience in ways statistics and graphs never captured. As she opened her mouth, a surge of bravery twirled through her veins. She began recounting stories from her diner, weaving her personal losses and victories with those of the patrons who had occupied her booth. Their struggles felt like interconnected threads, each one contributing to the rich tapestry of human experience that often got lost in financial jargon. She spoke of the single mother saving for her children's education, the elderly gentleman trying to make sense of a rapidly changing economy, and the young couple eating dinner on a shoestring budget, hoping for a spark of good fortune. Her words flowed more easily than she anticipated, slowly erasing the distance between herself and the audience. She noticed nodding heads, expressions of surprise, and approaches of fascination. With each anecdote, she revealed pieces of herself, unmasking not only her life experiences, but also the wisdom they held. She punched through self-doubt with every sentence, realizing her reflections resonated. Yet, hovering just beneath the surface was an inkling of vulnerability she couldn't fully suppress. What if they began to classify her? The thought struck terror in her. Would they see her only through the lens of a waitress, dismissing her value because she didn't fit their predefined categories? This question gnawed at her as she stepped deeper into her narrative. But rather than succumb to the anxiety, she confronted it. Jamila pivoted to her own financial journey, revealing the lessons her mother taught her about perseverance and frugality. She painted a vivid picture of sitting at the kitchen table, learning to stretch every penny, always strategizing about the next opportunity. It was in those moments that she discovered her own knack for resourcefulness, skills she'd taken for granted now transformed into lessons for others. Eyes in the auditorium blinked in contemplation. An unexpected realization tugged at her. Her message held value regardless of her societal standing. By sharing her story, she wasn't merely delivering facts, she was inviting people to rethink their perspectives on wealth and success. The audience was witnessing not just a woman speaking but a reflection of many lives, each grappling with their narratives. As she reached the conclusion, she made eye contact with several individuals, their expressions encouraging. Wealth isn't just calculated by what's in your bank account, it's measured by resilience and the stories we share, she declared, each word striking with unabashed sincerity. The applause that followed felt like a warm embrace, wrapping around her insecurities and reminding her of the strength within vulnerability. When she stepped off the stage, exhilaration coursed through her. The validation was not just in the applause, it was in her newfound acknowledgement of self-worth. This moment was a breakthrough, a pathway into an arena she had long hesitated to enter. Yet, as she gathered her belongings and prepared to exit, a familiar dread bubbled up. How would her voice be received in the broader world beyond this setting? Would she be able to sustain the momentum she had built? Or would the whispers of doubt return, urging her to retreat back into obscurity? As those questions formed, she tightened her grip on her bag. The journey ahead would require resolve, and the challenges would certainly not dissolve with a single act of courage. Jamila knew she needed to explore the possibilities her voice had unlocked. Who would she become now that she dared to step into her own narrative? The air felt charged, and her pulse quickened, and urgency gripped her mind. Turning back to the stage, she felt an overwhelming resolve. Blossom. This was only the beginning of her story, and soon, she would face the essence of what it meant to truly own her voice. Would she find the courage to push further into uncharted territory, speaking to a world waiting to hear her truth? The applause faded, leaving behind the hum of lingering excitement, but Jamila's thoughts raced. The exhilaration of sharing her story was already being overshadowed by the weight of expectancy. As she stepped through the exit, the reality of her surroundings settled in, a stark contrast to the warmth she had felt on stage. Outside, the day was crisp, the sun illuminating the sidewalk, but the brightness felt sharp against her skin. She hesitated, weighing the thrill she'd just experienced against the uncertainty that loomed ahead. This newfound recognition came with a burden of implications. Her message had resonated, but could she replicate that success every time someone asked to listen? She walked slowly, thoughts spiraling. What did it mean to stand in her truth while navigating a world that often still viewed her through outdated lenses? The bewilderment of being both a voice and an anomaly tugged insistently at her. If she were to step deeper into the narrative of her life, how could she ensure it bore substance and authenticity? Ideas flashed through her mind like lightning: workshops, community discussions, maybe even a blog. But doubt clawed at the edges of her ambitions. Could she really pull it off, or was she merely a passing novelty, a waitress with a tail? Her mind replayed the laughs and recognition from the crowd, but then a darker voice whispered that it could all just be an anomaly, a fleeting moment of clarity in a sea of misunderstanding. Driven by a mix of anxiety and determination, Jamila found herself at a cafe, not just any cafe, but a small local spot adorned with mismatched chairs and towering potted plants. It felt welcoming, like a sanctuary. Seeking solace, she ordered a latte and perched herself at a table in the corner. With a notepad by her side, she thought of her next steps. She knew sharing her story was important, but as a single narrative voice, what kind of impact could that really have? Drawing in a deep breath, she began to write, pouring her thoughts onto the page. Each stroke of the pen was both cathartic and daunting. She sketched the framework of her ideas, detailing her experiences and the economic realities that shaped her world, a tapestry woven with both color and shadow. The more she wrote, the clearer it became that her story was, in truth, an ongoing exploration, rather than a finite journey. Yet as the pages filled, the self-doubt sneaked back in, diverting her focus. Who would care what she had to say when there were financial gurus with Ivy League degrees dominating the discourse? The weight of comparison pressed heavily on her chest. Should she abandon this new path, slip back into the safe embrace of her diner, the known rhythm of daily life? Before she could linger too long on those thoughts, an unexpected figure entered her line of sight, a man in a sharp suit. He ordered his coffee with an air of authority, and as he turned to leave, his gaze met Jamila's. She recognized the look of interest flickering across his face, as if acknowledging the fire in her that was ready to ignite. "Excuse me," he said, a playful smile creeping over his features. "I couldn't help but overhear your speech earlier. Can I get some tips on financial strategy from the expert?" The jest cut through her haze of uncertainty, awakening something dormant within. She was not just a waitress, nor merely a storyteller, she could be a mentor, a beacon of insight in an unexpected context. That playful challenge twisted the atmosphere. Her heart raced again, but this time not from doubt. "Absolutely," she replied, a sudden surge of confidence lacing her voice. Though brief, their exchange sparked a connection, awakening her resolve. In that moment, Jamila realized she needed to embrace the messiness of her emerging identity, the waitress who dared to offer fundamental lessons in resilience, irrespective of how the world categorized her. As the man walked away with a chuckle, Jamila glanced back at her notepad, inspiration igniting anew. She was not yet polished or finished, and the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges. Yet, veering beyond self-imposed boundaries felt like a choice worth investing in. She realized her voice could be a conduit for change, a call to rethink the very definitions of success. With renewed determination, Jamila plunged back into her writing. The moment had arrived, she would open herself to possibilities and forge a path that transcended the limits she had placed upon herself. But what lay ahead? As she wrestled with her thoughts, an unsettling realization dawned. She was about to enter discussions far beyond her comfort zone, engaging not only with financial strategies but also with the complexities of her own identity. What would it take to walk this tightrope between vulnerability and expertise? And just as the question left her pondering, she felt a spark of something greater. This was not merely about financial insight, it was a narrative quest for herself. The time had come to face the deeper layers of her story, unraveling the complexities that intertwined personal experience with the lessons she sought to impart. How would she navigate this territory without losing sight of authenticity? The cafe buzzed around Jamila, a melange of chatter and clinking cups grounding her in reality. She returned to her notepad, the man's playful challenge reverberating in her thoughts. Was that moment a glimpse into something deeper? It jolted her, propelling her forward. The prospect of mentoring, however unexpected, beckoned with a hopeful glow, igniting an urge to explore her potential. Determined to transform that fleeting exchange into concrete action, she flipped the page and began sketching ideas for a potential workshop, a gathering where she could share her financial insights layered with personal anecdotes. What if she could create a space tailored for those often overlooked? Her hands moved feverishly, fueled by a mix of excitement and trepidation. But as the words flowed, the ever-present doubt crept in once more, winding its way around her thoughts like a vine suffocating a flower. Who would even attend? She glanced around the cafe, observing the faces of people immersed in their own lives, utterly unaware of her existence. Could she really stand before a group and offer anything of value? Jamila closed her eyes briefly, concentrating on the feeling she had when she spoke on stage. Yes, she had something important to share. She was more than a simple waitress, she was a narrator of resilience. A sudden resolve washed over her. This was the contemporary landscape of her professional development. She would embrace the unpredictability of her journey. Drawing deep breaths, she took a moment to visualize what her workshop could look like. A welcoming space, maybe her diner during off hours, filled with individuals hungry for insight, each person seeking to better navigate their financial landscape. Could her personal story help them find clarity? Slowly, she deciphered and articulated the core of her workshop concept: navigating financial realities with resilience. Each word carried weight, each detail linking her varied experiences. It was more than just sharing numbers and strategies, it was storytelling intertwined with practical advice. Her past would be the thread weaving everything together. After a while, she tore off the page, encapsulating that early vision. Exploring her voice as a mentor had morphed from self-doubt into a tangible mission. Yet, undoubtedly, this would require strategy. How would she market it? Who would she reach out to? Working through these logistical layers ignited a mix of excitement and anxiety. In the midst of planning, her thoughts drifted to the man in the suit. Where had he come from? Why had he approached her? She felt an instinct to know more about him, to learn from someone already established in a realm she was just beginning to explore. Was he just a one-time encounter, or did fate have something bigger planned? Before she could delve deeper into her budding ideas, the cafe door swung open, and in strode a familiar face, her childhood friend Lila. Lila had always been a fierce supporter of Jamila's ambitions, and the sight of her bright smile felt like a burst of sunshine cutting through lingering clouds. "Hey, I saw you speaking earlier. You were incredible," Lila exclaimed as she approached, her enthusiasm almost tangible. "What's new? You've got that look in your eyes." Jamila hesitated for a moment, contemplating whether to confide her desire to expand into workshops. However, the thrill of her ambitions began to bubble over. "I'm actually working on a workshop about navigating finances, inspired by my experiences. What do you think?" Lila's eyes widened, and a grin broadened on her face. "That's bold, Jamila. I'd love to help. We can brainstorm ideas together. You've got to take this further." Her friend's excitement propelled Jamila forward, yet another layer of uncertainty reared its head. Would she truly allow Lila into this space, where her vulnerabilities were laid bare? As they began discussing the nuances of creating the workshop, Jamila felt the walls she had surrounded herself with starting to crack. Each idea shared allowed her to confront the fear of inadequacy that had clung to her. It was clear that she would not walk this path alone. But could she fully embrace mentorship without losing the essence of her own narrative? With every laugh and idea exchanged over steaming cups of coffee, Jamila realized this was just the beginning. She was stepping into a new role, ready to tackle the unseen layers of complexity it entailed. Still, uncertainty hovered like an omnipresent fog. Would she manage to maintain her authenticity as she journeyed toward becoming a mentor? How could she share from the heart while navigating new expectations? The boundary between her personal and professional life was starting to blur, inviting both progress and confrontation in equal measure. As their conversation flowed, jam-packed with possibility and spark, Jamila's pulse quickened. She understood this was a transformative moment, complicating yet amplifying her sense of purpose. She was not simply preparing to teach, she was preparing to evolve, further carving out her space against the odds. Yet still, doubt flickered at the edges of her mind. Would she actually be able to carry this mantle? As thoughts spiraled into potential outcomes, a storm of uncertainty and hope, a question crystallized inside her: how far was she willing to go to uncover the vibrant, nuanced voice she harbored within? And just as she summoned the courage to delve further into these untested waters, she felt the weight of another potential encounter looming. What if this was the moment when she came face to face with a savvy investor or a critic who could either break her or buoy her dreams? What awaited her on this precarious balancing act of growth? The chatter in the cafe filled the air again, but this time, Jamila's thoughts had crystallized into a determined focus. Lila's encouragement had sparked a deeper fire within her, igniting what had previously felt like a distant idea into something achievable. She envisioned herself not just as a waitress but as a mentor poised to share her story and experiences. In the quiet moments that followed, she took stock of her ambitions and the steps required to give them life. "Where do we begin?" Lila's voice pulled Jamila back to the present, as she leaned forward, eyes sparkling with excitement. Jamila felt the weight of her own aspirations teetering between inspiration and a near-paralyzing fear. "We can start by mapping out topics. I think grounding sessions and personal stories will resonate. After all, that's what I have to offer," she replied, her voice a blend of excitement and apprehension. "Absolutely." Lila agreed, jotting down notes as she spoke. Maybe include practical tips and actionable strategies. People love something they can apply immediately. Jamila nodded slowly, cautiously pleased that her ideas were starting to take shape. But a quiet voice in the back of her head still harbored skepticism. What if the workshop didn't attract a crowd? Let us not just focus on logistics, she continued. We need to define who this workshop is for. Who am I speaking to? What do they really need? Lila paused, her pen hovering above the notepad. What about those who feel stuck in their financial lives? People who often think they can't improve their situations like you used to. The insight jolted Jamila, a wave of clarity sweeping over her. Suddenly, she found herself reflecting on her own tumultuous journey with money, navigating through a maze of misconceptions and fears. I was that person, she said, her voice steady. Maybe I can share my transformation and inspire others to see a different path. As the brainstorm unfolded, Jamila found herself warming to the concept, weaving her narrative through the notes Lila took. Ideas flowed between them like a dance, each step illuminating a new facet of her journey. The workshop could be more than just a series of lectures, it could be a haven for shared experiences and collective growth. Imagine it. An open discussion where I can share my missteps along with victories, Jamila envisioned aloud. I want to push them to believe they're capable of change just like I did. Lila nodded fervently, her enthusiasm palpable. That's where your strength lies. You've walked that road. But how will you get the word out? We'll need a solid marketing strategy. They spent hours diving into ideas, sketching flyers, and debating how to attract participants. Jamila's initial fear began to dissipate, replaced by a burgeoning sense of agency as she mapped out her next steps. This was her project, her voice the precise tapestry she had sought to weave for so long. Yet, amidst the excitement and momentum, Jamila realized she was grappling with an unexpected undercurrent of dread. The stakes felt higher than merely hosting a workshop, she sensed that something deeper was shifting within her. This venture was a fine line between personal and professional realms, demanding her authenticity at every turn. What if she failed to meet her own expectations and those of others? A sharp knock on the cafe door startled her, breaking her reverie. There stood a striking figure, the man in the suit from her earlier encounter, casually peering in as though searching for a familiar face. Jamila's heartbeat quickened, entwining curiosity with uncertainty. Could he really be in search of her insights? Part of her wanted to retreat, to shrink from the possibility of judgment. But another part, emboldened by her earlier discussions, began to yearn for validation. Do you want to go talk to him? Lila asked, reading the shift in Jamila's expression. Maybe I should, Jamila replied, conflicted. What if a conversation with him could simultaneously open doors and expose her vulnerabilities? With a final glance at their notes, she knew that this moment had the potential to pivot her aspirations in an entirely new direction. Fear wrestled with opportunity in that heartbeat. Okay, let us do this, she said, rising with a newfound steadiness that carried both hope and trepidation. As she approached the door, every step felt like a leap into the unknown, the weight of her ambition now palpable past her doubts. Would she seize this opportunity to further define her emerging voice, or would she allow fear to dictate her path? Her heart raced as she reached for the door handle, and with a deep breath, she pushed it open. What awaited her on the other side would either challenge her resolve or reinforce her burgeoning identity. The door swung open, and Jamila was instantly enveloped in the warm, bustling energy outside. She stepped outside, her pulse racing in sync with the rhythm of the city. Suddenly, the exaggerated bravado she mustered began to fade, replaced by trepidation. What would she say to him? Did she even have any insights he would value? The man, tall, impeccably dressed, and undeniably confident, looked down at her with an inquisitive smile. Hey there. I think we crossed paths inside. You were deep in thought, he said, his tone disarmingly casual. Yes. I was just brainstorming some ideas, she replied, already feeling the slight quiver in her voice. She chastised herself inwardly. She'd been building herself up in the cafe, and here she was, stumbling over her own words before he even spoke. Nice. I always find it fascinating what people consider inspiration. What do you do? His gaze was direct, unreadable. I'm a waitress, but I'm working on a workshop focused on personal finance, she said, her voice gaining a little steadiness. Personal finance. He leaned in slightly, curiosity piqued. Interesting. What are you covering? How to save pennies. The smile on his face was still there, but there was a glint of genuine interest in his eyes. Jamila took a breath, recognizing a challenge hiding beneath his humor. She seized the opportunity to pivot. More like how to shift your mindset about money. I've been where many people are, the feeling of being trapped by your circumstances. But I learned that transforming your financial life isn't just about numbers. It's about mindset. It's about believing you can change your situation. To her surprise, his expression shifted. He straightened, leaned back slightly, and regarded her with renewed scrutiny. That's a different angle. I've met countless financial advisors, but it's rare to get such a personal viewpoint. Why do you think people struggle with this? The question sparked an internal debate. Her instincts urged her to promote her workshop, to share snippets of her story, but the polite facade of the city felt suffocating. Was he truly interested, or was this all just a casual passing moment? Because, she started, her voice firming, society often makes you feel like change is unattainable. People think their background dictates their financial future. But I'm living proof that it doesn't. A slight spark of interest lit his features. And how did you pull yourself out? Her mind flashed back to nights spent poring over budgeting websites, to the ambitious decisions she had made, to the financial missteps that bruised her ego but ultimately fueled her growth. It all began with confronting my fears. I dug into my relationship with money and challenged every limiting belief I held. That's the cornerstone of what I want to share. As she spoke, a surprising wave of confidence washed over her. This encounter wasn't merely about impressing him or affirming her worth, it was about affirming her journey. She was a mentor in the making. What's next for you? He probed, leaning in as if anticipating a great answer. Well, I'm hosting a workshop soon, aimed at people who are struggling, just like I used to be. Her heart raced with vulnerability, a stark contrast to the earlier bravado. I want them to understand their power. Sounds ambitious, he replied, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. What's stopping you from doing it now? Have the right people heard about it? The sincerity in his voice cracked through her bravado and left her momentarily speechless. Suddenly, it wasn't a stranger's judgment she feared, it was facing her own reluctance, the fear of vulnerability. I'm still figuring things out, she admitted, her voice softer. And truthfully, I worry about attracting an audience. What if no one shows up? He tilted his head, reflecting for a moment before offering a supportive smile. Then you create something that draws them in. This might seem like a joke to some, but passion is contagious. Make it personal, Jamila. Her name tasted different on his lips, carrying a weight she had not expected. In that brief exchange, she realized this wasn't merely a conversation, this was a test of her resolve. Find me on social media and send me your marketing plan. I might have suggestions, he said, taking a step back. It was a simple request that collided with the enormity of her conception. Thank you. I will, she responded, her mind suddenly ablaze with possibilities. As he walked away, the air around her shifted. Uncertainty mingled with excitement, like a cool breeze on a warm day. Jamila stood taller, feeling a sense of accountability begin to anchor her ambitions in a tangible reality. But it wasn't merely this encounter. It was the realization that each conversation, each opportunity, would be an invitation to push against the boundaries of her fears. Could the risks she'd taken today foreshadow a future filled with possibilities? Determined, she turned towards the cafe, her thoughts now buzzing with marketing strategies, brainstorming sessions, and a growing sense of purpose. Would reaching out on social media bring more than just validation? What could capturing her story mean in the attempt to inspire others? The answers awaited, just beyond the next conversation. Jamila stood at the brink of a transformation, fueled by the recent interactions that had ignited a fire within her. The encounter with the man in the suit had been nothing short of a catalyst, affirming her path toward empowerment. Armed with fresh resolve, she dove into planning her workshop, now embracing her identity not merely as a waitress but as a voice of resilience and financial awareness. The next weeks unfolded with an exhilarating unpredictability. Jamila poured her energy into creating marketing materials, harnessing the digital channels she had long perceived as daunting. With Lila by her side, they crafted a vibrant social media campaign, sharing snippets of her story and expert insights. Each post was a thread, weaving together a tapestry of hope, struggle, and triumph. Each sharing cemented her commitment to this new path. Responses poured in, many resonating deeply with her words. Individuals reached out, sharing their experiences and the obstacles they faced. Each comment served as an acknowledgement of her journey, emboldening Jamila to step deeper into her newfound role. Over time, she began hosting informal meetups at her diner, gathering participants eager to share their financial dilemmas and aspirations. Each gathering revealed the profound power of storytelling and connection. On a particularly brisk Saturday morning, as the diner filled with the rich scent of coffee and bacon, she stood at the front, addressing a small but enthusiastic audience. Today, she announced, we share more than just numbers, we share our real stories. Together, we'll unravel the complexities of our financial lives. The warmth in the room felt electric, each face echoing understanding and vulnerability. As the discussions blossomed, Jamila was no longer simply recounting her past. She was witnessing the evolution of collective resilience, a community developing around shared struggles. It was exhilarating, and with each session, she not only provided guidance but also gained insights from the participants, each person enriching her narrative. As her confidence solidified, an unexpected email arrived one day, an invitation to present at a financial literacy conference. The request seemed surreal, casting a spotlight on her burgeoning reputation as a thought leader within her community. Jamila's pulse quickened. She recognized this opportunity could catapult her ambitions further than she had ever envisioned. She accepted, filled with equal parts excitement and trepidation. Weeks later, standing backstage at the conference, Jamila felt the familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. The audience buzzed, filled with financial professionals and individuals eager for insights. In that instant, she realized how far she had come from a waitress at a diner questioning her worth to a woman who had crafted a voice that demanded recognition. When it was her turn, she stepped into the spotlight, heart racing, adrenaline pumping. As she began to speak, she shared an encapsulating tale, not just her own, but the stories of participants who had attended her workshops. Their struggles resonated through her words, thick with vulnerability yet propelled by strength. Her narrative had expanded beyond herself, becoming a symphony of shared human experience. Applause erupted when she finished, not just for the information shared but for the genuine connection established. As she exited the stage, a hum of exhilaration filled her, a confirmation of her place in the dialogue surrounding financial literacy and personal empowerment. With every successful transition, Jamila reflected on her transformation. She had confronted not only her fears but had also dismantled the invisible barriers around her worth. The accolades and recognition were validating, but they were merely a byproduct of the deeper change she had cultivated within herself. As she returned home that night, Malik asleep in his room, Jamila sank into the comforting embrace of her couch. The sense of victory surged within her. This was her achievement, her moment of realization. She was not just a witness to change, she had become a beacon of resilience for herself and others. Ultimately, Jamila learned that true empowerment was about nurturing the stories of struggle, understanding that these were not just personal burdens, but foundations upon which others could build. Reflecting on her escape from doubt to clarity, she felt a solid confidence settle in. Her journey had shifted from survival to thriving, and with a heart full of hope, she picked up her pen, ready to chronicle the next chapter of her life both as a mentor and as a woman who had conquered her fears, fully aware of her impact in the world. Now is your time. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, as it truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the inspiration. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.